Tré Cool, known also as Frank Evan Wright III, was born in Frankfurt, Germany, 9 December 1972.
My brother Tré was a really cute baby, and old ladies used to come up and, oh, look at this beautiful baby girl, and he would kick them.
I was in the military at the time, and when I got out of the Army, we moved up here in the mountains north of Laytonville. It's about 3.5 hours north of San Francisco.
It's kind of a mix of sort of back to the land hippies, crazy mountain people, cowboys.
We didn't have electricity or TV or cartoons, but Tré actually liked it. He could, run around and make as much noise as he wanted.
The great evil Train Evil will now attempt to scare the horses to death.
He was loud, rowdy, big mouth, always putting on an act.
You go up to somebody on Fifth Avenue and you say, "Hello, Chop, do you have AIDS?" Cat!
He was a handful. Larry Livermore was our neighbor up on the mountains.
When I was a kid, I always thought of him as this wild kind of punk rock guy.
I was trying to have a punk rock band, so I needed a drummer. There was a lot of musicians there, but they were mostly hippie musicians, and they hated the kind of music we were trying to play. So I figured the only way was to get one of the kids that just didn't really have any preconceptions.
He needed a drummer really bad, so he said, "Hey, kid, how about these?" As soon as he got on the drums, he just took off.
Tré was only 11 or 12 years old at the time. He drummed on everything. Any surface was his drum. In the car, it was like, could you please quit that?
He got to where he could play the drums pretty good.
I'd say within a month or two, we were pretty sure we had a band.
And that's how they formed the band, the Lookouts.
Oh, you'll remember this for the rest of your life.
We were a punk rock band, and we all had to have punk names, and Tré Cool was as obvious, it seemed to me. I had a little bit of French, so why not?
He loved it, though. He thought, I'm a rock star now.
Once Tré got into high school, he was pretty serious about his drums.
I could tell he had something going for him that was really special.
He had the talent, he had the will to want to do it, and he wanted to get out of school a little early and start music and move away.
I understood it right away, and so did his mother, that if he was going to make music a career, he had to leave this little town.
They realized there was no point in sticking it out for graduation. He knew he wasn't going to really do college as far as be an accountant. I mean, what would he possibly do other than drums? Tré dropped out early, and then from there went straight to Berkeley.
There was this music community forming, and there was tons of opportunities.
Wow! Tré just kind of started getting to know everybody.
He was just the most outgoing human being you can imagine. Really the class clown of the punk scene.
Tré had met Billy and Mike at Gilman and hung out with them a while.
They were looking for a drummer at the time, and Tré just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Tré was just such a great drummer and so perfectly fit with those guys.
Like a glove.
When Tré came on, he took him to the next level.
I kind of knew at that point there was no chance that the Lookouts were going to keep going. I knew that if they succeeded, it would do us a lot of good at the label as well. I started the record label, Lookout Records, and in the spring of 1991, I sent them into the studio.
Kerplunk was 3 days with a budget of about $1,100. Load in at 10 in the morning, work till 2 a.m.
Let's just do it as quick and cheap as we can.
I heard literally like a few seconds of the first chords, and I knew this was like an album way beyond anything we'd done before.
Kerplunk was released in January of 1992.
The day it came out, we sold out the whole pressing at 10,000, which in those days was unheard of. I mean, the biggest album we'd ever had before, it sold 2,000 in a whole year.
Kerplunk was a killer record that really kind of marked Green Day's arrival as like a staple of the punk scene.
By the end of '92, they could do tours where they were playing pretty big places all over the country.
They were selling out Gilman Street every time they played, and selling out some other clubs that were bigger than Gilman Street.
They toured all over Europe.
And they came back and they looked completely different. They weren't kids with backwards baseball hats anymore. You know, they had tattoos and biker boots. They looked like rock stars. They're selling out clubs, but the records were not in the stores.
I don't think Lookout could keep up with the demand for Green Day anymore.
That's when they started getting a lot of attention from the more mainstream press and from the bigger record labels.
5 or 6 different major labels were trying to get their attention all at the same time, and it kind of created a bidding war.
Billy was totally blown away. He had no idea that people had been watching him, you know, and they knew how good he was.
The band realized we need to go the step farther. They had so outgrown their world that they came from.
But the scene that they came from frowned upon success.
In the punk rock scene, it's always been kind of a given that if you sign to a major label, you're considered a sellout.
How could you not be conflicted in that situation? I mean, you know, a 22-year-old kid making the biggest decision of his life, you know, and knowing you're going to leave certain people behind.
But they were high school dropouts, and this was their big chance. They were sort of like, F it.
Green Day signed to Reprise in '93.
The next thing I know, we were in the studio, and they made a good, raw, like, hard-driving punk record.
They were making a huge leap to, you know, Kerplunk the Dookie. You know, larger studio, spending more time. I had a producer.
And I was like, oh my God, I think we have something here. The record came out in February of 1994.
And Dookie Mania hit.
It pretty much just turned everything up to 10.
Every time you turned on MTV, you'd see Green Day.
Longview went to #1, and I remember going to them, guys, you're blowing up, and it's huge. They were kind of speechless.
Billy met Adrian on the first tour.
We started talking on the phone, and we became friends over the phone.
Billy started to fall in love with Adrian, but they couldn't be together because of distance.
He asked me to come out for the summer, and when I got out here, he said, let's get married.
Today is the first day of the rest of our lives.
We put our wedding together in less than 2 weeks. It was quite the whirlwind. We got married, found out I was pregnant, and then he left for tour.
Green Day had the opening slot on Lollapalooza that year.
But, you know, they felt a little out of place on Lollapalooza. The older bands were kind of like, you know, who are these guys? Why is everybody going so nuts over them?
Perry Farrell's responsible for starting Lollapalooza, and Green Day didn't get respect from him.
Perry Farrell didn't want us on the bill anymore because he thought that we were some band that some corporation put together or something. You know, we knew where we come from, and, you know, we don't need to really explain it to anybody.
It came to the point in the Lollapalooza tour when Green Day was definitely ready to move on, and that's when they did the first Woodstock reunion.
It was like, holy you're playing Woodstock, man. They flew in that helicopter and looked down at that crowd and went, wow, this is crazy.
It was a very rainy morning. Green Day comes on stage, and it is a mess.
They got out there, they played, they rocked really hard, and they figured make the most of it, and they just started a big mud war.
This is hip hop and peace and anarchy.
When Billy Joe put the mud in his mouth, I mean, I knew it was going to just escalate.
Everybody was covered in mud. Eventually, fans started jumping up on stage.
A security guard mistook Mike for an audience member, and he ran up and tackled him. And Mike went over onto a monitor and broke out his front teeth.
Hey, calm down, man. Look, we're just trying to have a little fun, rock and roll.
It was at that point, it turned into, oh my God, we have to get safe. And we immediately got in helicopters. It was scary. It was like the truest rock and roll moment you could possibly ask for.
Woodstock 94 was just Green Day's show.
It was just a huge success for them, and it was really covered in the media.
Woodstock made Green Day a traveling riot. That's it. Mob scene. Everywhere they played.
All of a sudden, we were selling 400,000 records a week.
Dookie sold 10 million records, which is